imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is July 25th, 2013. Tonight, I am joined for 2 hours by Debbie Lewis. She's a filmmaker. She's a radio show host. She's the wife of filmmaker William Lewis. And she is going to join me tonight to take the cover, the fake media narrative that is put in front of your eyes. We're going to lift that veil off of your eyes tonight. Most of you already, if you're tuning in, you don't really believe what the mainstream media has to say anyway, but after tonight, hopefully, if you're still one of those that once in a while tunes into Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, after tonight, hopefully you'll shoot your cable box. So, I know we got a quick break coming up, so let me introduce my guest, Debbie Lewis. Welcome to the show, dear.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
So, first things first, I know we have the break coming up in about a minute and a half, but I got to ask you, you chuckled at my comment there about shooting the cable. Would you recommend that they just shoot the cable box and stop? I mean, don't get rid of your TV. You could use it for deprogramming yourself with watching documentaries.
Yeah, absolutely. Just peddling influence.
Exactly. I threw it to her, and she knew what to do. Go on, Deb.
Oh, absolutely. I would recommend getting rid of cable altogether, which is what I've done. And in the past year, I get more frustrated with news because I get my news elsewhere and it's real news, But yeah, get rid of your cable. Because it's only going to make you angry because they're lying to you. They're lying to you. They're setting you up.
You can't turn on any of these cable news networks anymore without wanting to vomit. Turn on Fox News right now or CNN or MSNBC, and it'll be the same garbage. Horrific garbage media talking points. Even if Fox is appearing to have the alternative side of the said argument, it's going to be the same talking points. So it not only is it controlled, bullet points that come out from their mouths, but at the same time, it's also certain topics are the only thing that's covered. Doesn't matter who takes what side. It just matters that there's only certain topics covered. All right, I'm going to cut us off because the break's sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. 59 short seconds. When we get back, we're going to get into it. Go check out the film Peddling Influence. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So, before we get into it and dive into it, I want to have Debbie really quick because A, she's a radio show host and you should check her show out. And B, we're going to be discussing Williams' latest film, Peddling Influence, I want you guys to be able to go purchase the film, and I urge you to, and support Debbie's work and Williams' work. It's really important. I mean, look, if you don't support them, if we don't purchase the film, if I don't have her on to discuss it, if we don't stand together, then we're not going to be able to defeat this dark New World Order, because their scumbag, crappy media system has all the funding in the world from the military-industrial complex. So with that said, Debbie, where can they go, A, to purchase the film, and then B, where can they go to hear your radio show?
Oh, absolutely. They can go to williamlewisfilms.com to get Peddling Influence or any other film he's done. I think we've done 13 by now. He's done 13 by now. And so they can get Peddling Influence from there. They can go to securingliberty.com, and our radio show is Midweek Live with Michael and Debbie, and Michael J. Weber is my awesome co-host, and we have a good time on Thursday. Nope, we've just changed our show. Wednesdays at noon Central, from noon to 2 Central, on These Changing Times with a Z, radio.ning.com, and we have a good time, talk about the crap that's going on and all that junk. There's so much going on, there's so much going on that you can't even keep up. And now the media is exposed. Of course it's been exposed. Those of us who watch it know what's been going on, but we did this project to try to wake people up and tell you, hey, this has been controlled practically since day one. But
actually, I have to say, out of all of Williams' movies, this is probably, there's a few that are my favorites. This is probably in the top 5, I would say, if not the top 3 movies. And not because it's the newest one, but because of what it talks about. I mean, he just lays it all out on the table. And ladies and gentlemen, again, the name of the film is Peddling Influence. Go check it out. Order yourself a copy and watch it. You'll see how far back this goes.
Yeah, exactly. And, the thing is that when I started this project, because William has had me write a couple of projects for him now because he just doesn't have time to do everything. So when we started this project, my main goal was to talk about orchestrated wars. And I found a quote by journalist John Swinton. And I like to kind of start with this because people don't really understand what's going on. And the quote is this: "There's no such thing as at this stage in the world's history in America as an independent press. You know it and I know it." And he goes on to say, "I'm paid for keeping honest opinions out of the paper." So I asked people, when do you think that quote was made? And people say, oh, I don't know, 2002, 2003, 1997. No. John Swinton made that quote back in 1880. 1880. So, and this was at the end of his career as a journalist. He was getting an award for his body of work as a journalist. And instead of just getting up and accepting the award for his work, he got up and he told them, look, you and I both know there's no independent press. You and I both know there's no honesty in the press. And you're paid to keep your opinions out just like I'm paid to keep my opinions out. And that was in 1880. And so, even before that, the media was controlled.
Yeah, if he already had that attitude, that blasé attitude of, that this is the, what I mean, that this is the way it is, and don't, we both can't lie about it. I get paid to keep things out of the media and out of the general population's interest, and so do you. And if that was that very commonplace talk about it in 1880, that means the practice had been going on for some period of time before that, or else they wouldn't be that comfortable to talk about it like that. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And that's it. That was exactly what stunned me when I read that. I thought, wait, what? And absolutely, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that, when you think about it, that long ago that we've had a controlled media, that long ago that someone has been pulling strings. And the other thing is that a lot of people do, some people don't, but a lot of people do know about J.P. Morgan Jr., buying the controlling interests in newspapers before World War I. And that's actually in the congressional record in the House of Representatives from February 9th, 1917, I believe. Yeah, February 9th, 1917. That happens to be in the House of Representatives congressional records. And they talk about that. But this is like 37 years before that someone somewhere was controlling the news. And people need to ask questions. I mean, it's insane. It's insane to think that it's been going on this long.
Honestly, that blew me away when I saw that quote in the film. I was like, wait, what? And I actually had to rewind it back and have him listen to William repeat that little tidbit of info. And I was like, wait a minute. So 1880, and then I thought about it, and I was like, well, of course, there were probably partisan newspapers going back to, the founding of the country. And then he gets into that, too, in the film, how, the original printing presses, printing houses or whatever, they were the newspapers and circulars or whatever, they were very partisan on whatever side they took.
Right.
And then I thought about it, and I was like, wow, how ignorant was I to not even realize you look at this vast control of everything, and yet we would think that the control of the media, the way we know it's controlled today, would only maybe go back, somewhat into the 1900s, right? You wouldn't even think that it goes all the way back to the very beginning. Exactly.
And see, the one of the things that we discovered when we were doing the research for this film, and today in this day and time, journalists are supposed to be non-biased. Journalists are supposed to be, they aren't, but they're supposed to be. They're supposed to give you that front. Well, that type of journalism is new to the 20th century because our founding fathers were extremely biased, and they spoke their mind, and there were newspapers that were rabid against each other at the time, trying to, expose their opinions and make it easy for people to understand, that, or not understand, but try to educate people. These people thought this way about this subject. These people thought the other way about this subject. These people thought totally different from these other two, and you have all these opinions out there. Well, today, what we get is a homogenized version of news that tells you slightly different angles on the same exact story. You're given the quote-unquote sides to take up front. You don't know that, but you are. Especially one of the things that you see that in regularly is elections. If you don't see that in our federal elections, then you are blind as a bat, because they give you up front no other choice but GOP or Dems. You don't get to talk about in the news. You don't get to talk about the Constitution Party, the Libertarians, all the other independent third party people running for anything, Green Party, whatever. Whether you agree with them or not, the point would be that all of those opinions are out there in the open for you to say, wait, I agree with that one, and I don't agree with this. This one makes sense, but that one doesn't. And you can form an educated opinion. What we get now is basically two sides of one coin. Same coin, two sides of one coin, and that's your choice. That is inherently wrong in a free society because you don't get to experience everything that you should with a free media. We don't have a free media. We know we don't. And John Swinton told us we didn't in 1880. So.
Yeah, and Lord knows how long. I would say it goes back to the beginning. I mean, somebody, obviously there was, at least back in the beginning, if there was one good, honest printing press, somebody running a circular or whatever, there was probably somebody that said, well, we can't have that, they agreed with the British, we'll say, and I'm sure that there were people that put out information, praising the British and going against the rebels or whatever they wanted to call them back in the day. So I'm surprised of myself, that I was ignorant of that. Because you would think, oh, well, it's just, that goes back, the control of the media only goes back, like I said, maybe to like the 1900s. Before that, we had free press in this country. After all, that's what we were founded on, Debbie, blah, 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 blah. But that's, you know what I mean? That's not really how it is.
Right. Here's another good quote that I stumbled upon that actually made me feel better about getting rid of cable. He says, I don't take a single newspaper nor read one a month, and I feel myself infinitely the happier for it. You want to take a stab at who said that?
Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson said that. And if Thomas Jefferson, as wise as he was, can make his decisions without reading mainstream news, well, not at that time it was a little different, but still, some of the same stuff going on. But if he can be happier without it, I can be happier without it. And I can tell you it makes a difference. Although when you don't watch cable news anymore and somebody references it and you feel like you want to just jump through the phone or jump through Facebook and choke them till they pass out. Stop spouting that stuff. But
no, I hear you. Sometimes it'd be nice to be able to reach through the like my mother used to say, I wish I could reach through the phone lines and reach out and touch someone.
And yeah, there you go. Really hard. No, I'm kidding.
Sometimes it gets frustrating. I do that. I yell at the TV. I find myself screaming. Like, I can't watch mainstream stuff anymore. If my wife and I go out somewhere, and they have, because everywhere you go now, do you notice there's TVs everywhere you go?
Yeah.
In bars, sports bars, diners, no matter where you go, there's a friggin' TV. When I was a kid, and actually up until recently, I would say probably within the past like 10 years, it's become really prolific. But when I was a kid, and when I was, younger, I used to, if I took a date out to the diner, they had, I'm gonna age myself here. They had jukeboxes where you could put quarters in and listen to music, and that was it. There were no televisions. You actually had conversations with the person in the booth that you sat with.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think that is a lost art because of what you're talking about. Television's everywhere now.
And that's why it's 24-hour news all the time. It's to first they had to draw them in, and now they baffle them. They get that cognitive dissonance going. They get people, they give them a happy story, and then they give them a horrific story, and then they give them a happy story, and then they give them a horrific story, and then they might give them like 2 or 3 medium road stories, and then boom, something really horrific, and then something happy, and then they end it on a horrific note again. They go back up to like a busload of nuns going into a wood chipper or something.
Yeah.
And okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have. We're out, and then they leave, and it's like, and people are so, their emotions are so jerked back and forth. They're just like, you know what? I'm not turning on the news anymore. I don't want to watch that crap because I get an anxiety attack. And that's exactly what that stuff is geared to do. And then, if you stay tuned into it, then it's like an addiction. After 9/11, I was like that. And I was a smart cookie. I was a smart cookie. I always questioned the government before 9/11. But because I was a fireman and because I was so close to the actual event itself, the trauma-based mind control of that day did affect me for a while, and once I looked at it with a clear mind, it was differently. But even then, that whole event, that clouded my judgment. In the way the media, right off the bat, in the beginning, I was like, yeah, we need to get Bin Laden, war. Now when I look back on it, I'm like, oh wow, they're the ones that told us who did it. Look, they're like, Bin Laden did it. It wasn't the government. It was the media. But then, at that point, I wasn't paying attention. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Quick 5-minute segment here. A nice long one coming up on the other side of the break, so don't worry. Anyway, during the break, I was talking to Debbie about what I experienced with, my waking up with 9/11, and how, I was telling you guys before we went to break, as you can see, I've never trusted the powers that shouldn't be to begin with. I was 18, and I had the bumper sticker that Ron Paul had on his desk on the back of my truck. Don't steal, the government hates competition. I've been driving, and that was back in the 90s. So I've had that attitude for a long, long time. but that the trauma that your brain, I'm trying to think of the good word, the proper terminology, because I want to put this right. I don't want to say endures. Well, I guess you could say endures. It experiences is the proper term. The trauma, the mental trauma, not the physical trauma, but the mental trauma that your brain experiences. It took me years to deal with that. I locked that stuff away. I mean, I joined the military. It took me a long time, like I was telling you, Debbie. It was this weird path of via investigating the Iraq War and just reading the accounts of people that were actually doing the fighting on the ground and how those accounts differed from what the government and, of course, the media were telling us. That led me back into looking at this stuff. So.
Exactly.
And well, it took me that long because, hey, that was a traumatic event. I was disappointed in myself is where I was going with that. So, but, and I consider myself to be a smart person. I know the listeners would too, but hey, you know what? If I can make that mistake, anybody can, right? So it's not a big deal that we're all baffled by well, don't beat yourself up over being baffled by their BS is what I'm saying, because they're very good at what they do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, they are trained well in propaganda warfare, and they are trained well to do whatever it takes to sway public opinion. They have done it for, and everybody gets on to me for saying well, we don't know who is totally in charge. Our president's not totally in charge, and that Congress, while they seem to be in charge, they're not. And so something's going on behind the scenes. We just don't know exactly what, who, and why. But we do know at times who has had influence. And that's kind of important. That's one of the things we find. But when you're talking about 9/11, at first it was the trauma. Like you said, two planes slammed into two buildings in New York. Oh my gosh, what is going on? And the first thing you think is, good grief. Well, when you step back and start looking at it, you start looking at the physical evidence and you realize nothing matches. It doesn't even match the narrative, the official narrative. Everything they were telling us, it didn't match. And at the time, especially with the Pentagon seems to be the one that if you can get people to look at the Pentagon, then they'll look at something else. But, true unbelievers, everybody that believes the official story. But if you can get them to look at the Pentagon, you can get them to understand that there were things going on. And one of the things that people need to understand about the Pentagon and the physical evidence there and the way the media portrayed it was, this humongous airplane slammed into the bottom floor of the Pentagon, did not tear up the lawn of the Pentagon, by the way. If you look at the photographs, the lawn is intact, yet plunged itself into a 16-foot hole. A huge jumbo jetliner slams into the Pentagon, and where are the wings? Where are the engines? Well, they sheared off. They folded back on the plane, and it all crumpled into this hole. Really? Really? 9,000-pound engines on each wing just crumbled in on the airplane and sailed through the 16-foot hole. And then you start looking at the media is telling you this, but you start looking at the fire foam, the foam they use to spray for the fire, and there are windows intact on the Pentagon that should actually not even be there because the tail section would have hit them. But they're still even whole and you can tell that because there's fire foam all over them. That's not made up. Nobody's making that up. That's a fact. That's in the photographs.
Well, you could see the original photographs before that roof section, right. That piece, exactly. that chunk above the hole collapsed. You can see that there's no way that a commercial airliner would fit in that hole. And there was also no wings, no motor, right. No tail section, no landing gear, no luggage, no bodies, no nothing.
No bodies. Right.
What there was a lot of questions. That's what there was. I'm going to cut us off because the break's sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We will continue this enlightening conversation in just a few short seconds. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. I suggest you go to the website and get not only Peddling Influence, but get all of William's other films. If you can't get all of them, at least get a few of them. You can go over to williamlewisfilms.com. And as I said, I suggest you get at least a few of them. I've been I don't want to say fan, but I guess you could say fan, a fan of his work for a very long time. So some of the very first films that I saw that woke me up and pointed me in the right direction when I knew something was up but really didn't have a clue as to where to look were Williams films. So I would not have Debbie on, and I would not be backing Williams films if I did not believe in him as a filmmaker and trust what he has to say. And it doesn't mean I agree 100% with everything he says 100% of the time. That's the beauty of, enjoying someone's work. You don't have to agree 100% with everything. I'm sure no one agrees with 100% of the things I say. I hope you don't. That would make life boring if you were just listening to me like a brainless automaton going, I love Popeye. He's awesome. I don't mind if you don't agree with maybe the way I say things all the time or some of the things. That's fine. That's what discourse and proper debate is about. Just let's not get nasty with each other. Anyway, I support William Lewis. I support his films. I support Debbie. She's an awesome lady. Go check out her radio show and make sure you go get at least 3. 3 is the magic number. Let's do like these. The Illuminists, right? The Illuminati. They like threes. They like things in the shape of pyramids, and they have all certain numbers for certain things. So go get 3 films from Lewis's site. Pick any 3 you want. I would at least get one of them do Peddling Influence, so you can sit down and have an understanding of what we're talking about here tonight. But check out the stuff he's done on 9/11. I saw, Debbie, an interview William did on Netflix. It's part of this movie called The Conspiracy to Rule the World. He was interviewed by some British talk show host. I can't remember the guy's name right now. But the guy, I got to give the guy credit. I mean, he does a pretty decent show or whatever. But William was talking about, I think it was 9/11 in Plain Sight was the film that he was talking about at the time, because they were discussing 9/11 like we were. And he was discussing how a lot of people are always attacking the theory of the remote-controlled aircraft, and he said that they didn't put a lot of the details, I guess, in the film because they were concerned about the people's families at the time, because they had been threatened and stuff. But they had evidence, and he had seen evidence that there were literally pilots that did remotely fly those planes into the buildings. And I'm not saying, a lot of people, they say, oh, those pictures, they've been debunked. Look, whether or not that is a shadow or it's not a shadow, you wouldn't even need something big like a pod on the bottom of the plane. You could remotely control it from the inside. I'm sure they could just put a little transponder, and back then it probably would have been the size of maybe a credit card, or who knows, now it's probably the size of a dime. So they wouldn't need, some huge pod. But I do believe that those planes were remotely flown into the buildings. And that I randomly found that interview on Netflix one night. It's called The Conspiracy to Rule the World. It's part of this little documentary, and that little segment of the interview he was on, they threw in there. But that's actually, I think, one of the most interesting things I've heard when it comes to 9/11, at least evidence-wise, when it comes to the planes and whether or not they were remotely flown or how that happened. And that leads me, that's why that led me back looking into, again, whether or not the planes were remotely controlled. And I personally believe that I don't think they were holograms. I think they were remotely controlled. I know that's a hotly contested issue in the 9/11 truth community, but, what's it?
Well, here's the thing. I've heard of the Conspiracy to Rule the World. Somebody asked me about it about a year and a half ago. I didn't even know he was in that, so I'm going to have to go watch it. I still haven't watched it, even though somebody asked me a year and a half ago. But you've got, whether it's a hologram, whether it was remote controlled, whether it was whatever it was. The problem is that I believe that it could have been remote controlled, and everybody says, well, that's not possible. Well, yeah, it is possible. When we were doing a film, we were doing information and research for a film, Washington, You're Fired. We spoke to a guy that was in the Navy, And he told us that basically all the technology that we know that the government is using, everything we know about is at least 20 years old. What they're actually using, you have no idea. So could they have remote control? Could they have flown remote control planes into those buildings? Absolutely, they could. Absolutely. Could they have been holograms? It's possible. I don't know about that. There was a lot of damage, but hey, the technology was probably there long before 9/11, and depending on who you speak to, and we've talked to a fellow from Washington who actually told us that in the mid-70s, I think it was, he was telling us that they had a scenario. He was in Germany, and they pulled two separate sets of guys from the armed forces to the side. They picked certain people, and they said, we have a scenario that we want to try to figure out. So what we're going to do is we're going to present you with a scenario, and what we want you to do is, number one, tell us how you would pull it off, and number two, tell us how you would combat it. So he said the thing for him was really weird because at first it started off as a random building. And they started talking about how you could infiltrate the airport, how you could get on the plane, how you could control the plane, what you could do about this, that, and the other. And he said the next thing he knew, at the next meeting, the building, quote unquote, had been changed to the New York Twin Towers. 2 buildings now. And this was in the 70s. 2 buildings now. And they were going to take him down by airplane, of course. So one guy in the crowd said, well, my brother works airport security, and at a certain time, you can get past airport security because they're changing, basically it's the changing of the guard, and they're not paying attention. So you can get past airport security. And another guy in the crowd who had a relative that worked for airport security said, something that you could get on planes easily? Box cutters. So when this guy, who was actually, he had clearance as I don't think he was Special Forces at the time, but at the time of 9/11, but he had some kind of security clearance with the FBI. And he said when he heard that, number one, the Twin Towers had been hit by planes, and then when the information came out that the hijackers were using box cutters, it automatically sent him back to the test that they did in the 70s with the guys. The scenario and everything about it. He said it was so similar. It's eerie. And he swore to uphold, fight terrorism. This is flat out terrorism, but where's the terrorism coming from? He says this is definitely a government plot. There's no doubt about it, because we've done this scenario. We did it in Germany, in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. And his name is Grillfire, codename Grillfire. If you search that, you'll come up with some other information that's really interesting about 9/11. And I think that there's probably even more. You've got so many people out there talking about the holograms and the thermite in the bottom of the building, this, that, and the other. Right now, until somebody comes out and actually tells us the truth, all making educated guesses by what we see and what we have read, what we've heard, and everybody can have a theory. Does that make sense?
No, I agree. I mean, right now, we know that something happened that does not fit the official narrative. We can all agree that the official story is bunk.
Exactly.
What we don't really know what took those towers down. I think it was a combined I mean, me personally, I think it was a combined, use of different types of explosives, maybe, some old classic type stuff, like C4, and perhaps some new exotic stuff that we have no idea what the hell it is. Obviously, something turned those buildings into mostly dust, because those piles at the bottom, there's not enough, literally physical mass there to equal what once stood there. It doesn't make any sense. That's where all that dust came from. All that stuff that people inhaled was literally the buildings and the desks and the people that were in it when it went poof. So what buildings don't normally just turn into dust and fall down in the middle of the day because an airplane hits it. And I don't care if people think jet fuel burns hot or not. First of all, it doesn't burn that hot, and it certainly doesn't burn hot enough to bring down the buildings the way they did. So, I mean, it needs to be looked into. I think it's a really hotly contested issue. What actually did the planes fly in? Did they use holograms? I think a lot of that stuff is done on purpose. In fact, and that I mean, maybe I'm wearing my tinfoil hat when I say that, Debbie. But I mean, we're already in tinfoil hat land at this point, right? If you want to look at it that way.
All the way, buddy.
Yeah. So. Yeah. You might as well strap that thing on nice and tight and put it in fifth gear and put the pedal down.
Absolutely.
I honestly think a lot of the stuff that is put out there, and I'm not attacking anyone's theories individually or saying which theories, because I don't want anybody out there going, oh, Popeye said this. No. We can get into later debates on that if anybody, closer to 9/11 when I start to do my 9/11 broadcast for this year. But I just think some of the things that are out there are put out there to muddy the waters. That way, when people go to look into it, there's so many different things. You or I are going to go, well, no, I know from my research this, that, or the other thing. And we're already grounded when it comes to the conspiracy realm. But a lot of the new people looking into it aren't. And when they come into the realm of 9/11, they see this and they're like, whoa, it goes from the government did it to the government, with bombs to they used, weapons that we don't know about, some sort of, super, futuristic technology or holograms or this or that. And whether, don't get me wrong, it's all a possibility. I don't discount any of it, but to the new people, and I'm from any end of the spectrum, I say we look at it with open eyes, put all the evidence on the table, and let the evidence lead us, where it may. But to the new people, they're going to look at that stuff and go, wow, it goes from bombs to, some sort of unknown technology. These people are weird. I'm out of here. And they're not going to, you know what I mean? Or, there's other pieces of disinfo out there too, but that's what I see. That's my take on it anyway.
Right. Oh, exactly. And something that many people don't think about, and I'm not sure why, but it could be just because they don't have time to think about it because there's so many things going on, if that makes sense. But think about the buildings, think about the planes, think about wrecking balls that hit buildings. You have wrecking balls that range from about 1,000 pounds to 12,000 pounds. And even those wrecking balls, they don't hit a building and it crumble to the ground into dust ever. When they used to use wrecking balls to tear down buildings, and you've seen the footage, I'm sure. They hit that building and hit that building and hit it and hit it and hit it, and it finally starts to crumble, right? Well, all of a sudden you have this plane that hits a building and it crumbles into dust.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It defies basic logic. I'm going to cut us off. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. That segment went by fast as hell. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You can't talk about this insanity without bringing up 9/11. It's one of those linchpin issues. And, it's insane. I think you put it best going into the break. Really, a plane hits a building with a little bit of jet fuel in it, and suddenly the building turns into dust, and everybody's okay with that. That's the norm now.
Yeah, exactly. And so when they, I think it was a test. I think it was a possible test, because if you remember correctly, and you may or may not, there was so much going on that day, but Fox News's own Mark Bernbach literally came out and said it wasn't a commercial plane. It was a gray plane. He started describing the plane, no windows, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, Mark Bernbach disappears from Fox News. Then about, 4 to 5 years later, he shows back up. He's a correspondent. We try to talk to him about it. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It was absolutely a commercial airliner. And you're like, whoa, wait, what? And then you have, Jamie, McIntyre over there at CNN standing on the Pentagon. There's no discernible pieces of airplane here, blah, 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 blah. Then he says, well, that quote was taken out of context. You didn't get the whole quote. And we called him. I actually called CNN, got Jamie McIntyre on the phone, which I couldn't believe at first. I really couldn't believe it. And they started talking to Jamie McIntyre, and he's like, you don't know what you're talking about. You took that out. You took that quote out of context, and you have no idea what you're talking about. Blah, 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 blah. This is what happened. This is what happened. And you're like, dude, you've got to be kidding. And no, not kidding. He actually said that. So it's, the media, whoever's controlling them, let me just tell you, whoever's controlling them has really tight reins, because it's insane. And one of the other things surrounding this happened because of 9/11. Now, do you remember the FISA Amendment Act happened because of 9/11?
Yep, secret courts.
Secret courts, right. Okay, that all happened because of 9/11. Well, you go back and you find out that two of the New York Times correspondents, James, I think his name was Rosen, and Eric Lichtblau, wrote an article about what was going on with regard to the wiretaps and all that. And the government, Bush's administration, actually stepped in and say, hey, by the way, I need you to hold that story, because it's not time to release that story yet. You need to hold that story, and we'll let you know in a year or so if you can let it go. And they literally did. The New York Times held that story, and so a year later you find out that, they've been doing this for, how long? And nobody thinks to say, well, what do you mean it's been going on for how long? They exposed it in 2005, but you go back and you find out that, number one of the telecom companies that did not turn over records, by the way, Quest, was approached, did not turn over records. They were approached in February of 2001, not after September 11th, when Bush said he started contacting these people for their records so that he could hunt down these terrorists and blah, blah, blah. Quest was approached in February. When Quest made the comment about being approached in February, all of a sudden, the CEO of Quest is now in trouble with the IRS, and he was arrested and thrown in jail. Coincidence? I don't think so.
Gee, big surprise.
Saying. Yeah, just saying. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I think that somebody needs to look into that and say, wait a minute. What? Because it's literally, when you start thinking about it, it just blows your mind. And now, of course, in June, about the middle of June, Glenn Greenwald came out and broke the news that the NSA is scooping up all this information from Verizon. Everything on the Verizon network is now going through the NSA, right? And people got angry, finally. They got angry, but what happened to the people back in 2005 when the New York Times and Rosen and Lichtblau let you know that it wasn't just Verizon at that time? It was Verizon and AT&T and everybody involved with Verizon and AT&T, Sprint, Nextel, and the whole shebang, scooping up your information, sending it to the government.
Yeah, and Fox News also did a piece where Israel had a massive spy ring inside the United States right before 9/11, and they were tapping into that very capability of them tapping everyone's phones to listen to people's communications as well.
Exactly.
A lot of stuff people have no clue about. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with hour number 2 in exactly 59 short, quick seconds. Stay tuned. Go check out all of William's movies, WilliamLewisFilms.com. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. Today is July 25th, 2013. It is the Thursday edition, and I am hanging out with Debbie Lewis. She is, if you haven't already realized, not only is she a firecracker, but she's a radio show host in her own right, and a part of the filmmaking team that is William Lewis Films, and she, I would say, even if you don't make the film yourself, you do, even if you don't do the editing, you do the research, you help William, you do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, Debbie. So first of all, thank you for your work over the years. And really quick, plug your show again and plug the website with all the films and anything else you want to plug.
I will. The website to get the films is WilliamLewisFilms.com. I'm not a good multitasker, so I put the wrong website in the chat, but it's WilliamLewisFilms.com. And I do host a radio program, Midweek Live with Michael and Debbie, and that's on Wednesdays at noon. You can go to securingliberty.com and listen live, or you can go to the station we're on, which is These Changing Times with a Z, radio.ning.com, Wednesdays at noon Central. And, we post a lot of stuff on Securing Liberty as well, securingliberty.com, which I'm behind on because we're on 2 new projects now. So, and you're right, I wouldn't know the first thing about editing a film at all, but I do do the research and write the films now. I've written the last 3, I think, fully.
Nice.
So,
well done. Yeah, and
thanks.
And you're part of the team, so you deserve some recognition. And again, you're also a host in your own right. So I love if somebody's got a good broadcast, and I enjoy them, and I enjoy talking to them, and I like to support them. So that's why I'm glad you got a chance to. I like to give you the opportunity to plug your stuff. We got about a minute and a half. And then we got that short, quick break, and we'll have a nice long segment. But when we were ending the first hour, I had mentioned the Israeli spy ring. And in Peddling Influence, you guys actually, a lot of people are afraid to go near the issue because those waters have been muddied in and of themselves, with the blatant hate, and a lot of that stuff is, from the ADL or the SPLC, that stuff's funded by them. But you guys actually talked about and did a really good job, I thought, of laying out, at least just in a brief, giving a brief example, tip of the iceberg type event of how the nation state of Israel actually, like through AIPAC, it controls the media and politics. Right. Not completely, they're 100% in charge, but they have a heavy influence. And it's amazing. There's a few things that I learned that I didn't realize, that I thought I knew, but there was a few little details here and there that had been tweaked for me. So again, people need to look at this, and again, this isn't, the Jews did it. That kind of stuff is put out there to muddy the waters. But all of these different things have to come together. Again, the New World Order is global in scope. So it would mean people from all over the place working together to do bad things against us. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. You see, this is the topic that nobody likes to talk about because you'll have people from either side. I guess the extreme trolls on either side will come and attack you over this one. But you'll get people that'll say, when you talk about media control or governmental control, you'll say, how come no one brings up the Israeli influence, blah, no one wants to talk about it. And then you'll get the other, the other side of the coin that defends it and says, well, if you talk anything about Israel, you're one of those people that say the Jews do everything and you must be anti-Semitic. And when I say the ones on the other side are saying, well, you don't ever bring up Israel, that's actually a really bad representation. The better representation would be the Jews did it. They do everything. That stuff, I think a lot of that stuff is pushed out there by the ADL, SPLC, funded by them, created by them, whatever, fomented by them to muddy the water, so that way when you really do talk about Zionism, which is not what people think it is, you should actually go see what the Rothschild version of Zionism, which is what you see going on. Okay, that in itself is a whole different topic. But if you go and look into that, you're labeled. They throw that anti-Semitic label on you because of the extreme stuff that's out there. And like I said, a lot of that extreme stuff is fomented, and it's amazing that the media will run with certain things but not, facts.
Right.
And it's just, and again, I don't think that they control everything. There's more than one hand in this. It's just they have a large part. They're involved with a lot of different aspects of it. Unfortunately, maybe you could say they're higher up the food chain, but they're definitely not at the top of the pyramid by any means. And it's like a taboo subject. Nobody wants to talk about it. But look, I mean, you guys actually, there was a clip in the movie in Peddling Influence. Again, you guys played that clip between was it Billy Graham and Richard Nixon?
Let me tell you. Do you mind if I tell you a story?
Go ahead.
All right. I started uncovering some of this stuff, and I told William, I said, I'm going to do this. And he said, you can't do it. I said, yeah, I really can. I said, either we're going to tell the truth or we're not. He said, I'm not against telling the truth, but this is going to get us in trouble. I said, it's the truth. And when I found that clip, I thought, you got to be kidding me. And there was no way you couldn't. At that point, there was no way we couldn't cover it. And William says, I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to trust your judgment. I'm going to put it in there. I hope it's not a mistake. I said, it's not going to be a mistake. Not going to be a mistake. And sure enough, some people knew a little bit about it. Some people didn't realize what was going on. At the time, even, some people didn't realize what was going on. But you've got Billy Graham and Richard Nixon talking about the fact that the only friend Israel has at that time was the United States. And they're screwing that up. It was... And
by this time, they'd already attacked the Liberty, by the way.
Right, exactly. Which, in and of itself, you've got people that say, well, the Liberty shouldn't have been where they were. Israel knew the Liberty was where it was. They knew they were there. That there was no way that they were innocent of that. None.
Well, people ask, why would they attack the Liberty? And I say, well, you should go look into what the Liberty had heard, because the Liberty was a spy ship. They were working for the NSA. They weren't working at the behest of the Navy. They were a Navy vessel working at the behest of the NSA. And they had picked up that the Israeli IDF was executing Egyptian war prisoners of war. That's against the Geneva Conventions. They were committing war crimes. Well, you can't have witnesses to that, can you? And then there's also the because remember, nothing is ever done for one reason alone. If they sink the ship, well, then when they sink the ship, they can blame it on Egypt. And we came a hair's breadth away from dropping nukes on Egypt that day.
Exactly. Speaking of that, I would like to actually refer back to another part of the film that actually talks about the government of Israel. And that has to do with Operation Susanna. And Operation Susanna was an ill-planned, ill-prepared operation by the Israeli government to actually turn the United States and the government of Britain against Egypt, because at the time Britain was about to pull out of Egypt and leave the Suez Canal. And so you have basically what you have is you have this operation where they are going to bomb American and British targets Exactly. Somebody posted the Lavon affair in there. That's exactly what it is, the Lavon affair. And they were targeting American and British targets in Egypt, libraries and whatnot, and blaming it on Egypt. So that it looked like the Egyptian government was out of control and maybe the British government would stay. And so Israel would have, would not be blackballed, basically. Well, they never admitted that. And I think, 2000, I'm trying to remember the exact year, and I can't remember the exact year, but...
It's like 2005 or something, I think.
Yeah, 2005 or something. They came out and actually honored the spies who were still alive, actually, which was kind of scary.
That took part in the event that they said didn't happen.
The Lavon affair. Right, exactly. And, of course, they went into full-out propaganda mode to protect their own citizens from knowing what was going on at the time. So the people in Israel had no idea what the Israeli government had done. They had no idea. And that, when I found that, I thought, this is just unbelievable.
Surprise, surprise. Like I said,
right.
Rothschild,
but it's the same thing. Exactly.
Is the same people that, they're the same hand of influence is here, our government. So obviously it's not, I mean, you can't even blame, when people always say, well, it's the people of the, no, it's not the people of. Look, there are some racist people in Israel that are, like, what they do to the Palestinian people is horrific. I'll just say it. But you know what? Those, and they condone it, right? They cheer it on. Well, we do that same stuff here in America. So when we really shouldn't be like, those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And I'm not saying we shouldn't criticize them, but let's not point fingers and go, you guys are horrific. We do that here too. Okay. Obviously there's a pattern. It's the propaganda, and I'm not condoning their behavior. Again, everybody it comes to personal responsibility down with everybody at a personal level. But I understand how people can be manipulated. I don't want to focus my anger on the lower level people that they want you to focus your anger.
Right.
I want to focus my anger on the scumbags that deserve it. The people that are pulling the strings. And it's the same people that are pulling the strings all over the place. So obviously this isn't a conspiracy theory.
Right.
It's conspiracy fact, right?
Conspiracy fact, exactly. And the thing that people need to understand, and this has become more and more clear to me, especially after, it's like you say, we know what's going on. We've been watching it long enough that we know what's going on, but it becomes more and more clear when you realize that what's actually happened is, and part of my realization of this has come at the expense of the new research that I'm doing for this new film that we have coming out. And it scares me to think that that the general population is never going to get it. But basically what you have is a population who is, number one, being controlled by the media, by their own public servants, by the police state, whatever. When, in fact, what is actually going on is you have these bunch of people creating, and I dare say it, I'm going to say it anyway, classes of people, races of people, and dividing us and keeping us conquered and keeping us down so that you can't move on, that you can't see what's going on. And what it boils down to is you have the world government, I'm going to say it, the world government trying to protect its status quo. Because we all know that every major government in the United States is part of the New World Government. We know this. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fact. If you don't think so, what just happened to the world economy all over the place when the United States economy hit the dirt? We are connected in a world conspiracy, not a world conspiracy, but a world conspiracy too. But what you have is the world government is trying to protect its social status and social order against the people of the world, the populations of all these different countries. And the way they do that is to control their media so that you think all the Jews are bad, and I think all the whoever else is bad. And it really has nothing to do with the people of any country. It has to do with the government and how they use the propaganda arm of their own, their own regimes to control what the people know and what they don't know.
Well, that brings up the topic that I brought up to you off air, and you had said that you refused to even talk about it on your show, and I give you credit for that, because that's a tough thing to do as a host, and not talk about something. Trust me. But I give you a lot of credit. But since you're, it's like chill, relaxed environment. I got to get your opinion on this, and it's a perfect segue for it. The divisive race baiting rampant all throughout the media. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You can't you can't pick up a newspaper, go to a blog, or turn on the TV or the radio without hearing that if you have an opinion about anything, Obama says it's now racist. If you have an opinion about, especially with this kid getting shot in Florida, that whole case has been just used, and it's a horrific situation. But the government and the media took that boy's death and they exploited it, and it's disgusting.
Oh, they did. Absolutely, they did. And the thing about it is let's look at it this way. I found out in a roundabout way that particular whole deal worked its magic in ways that are beyond anyone to think about, unless you think with a tinfoil hat on, I hate to say. But here's the thing. You have the Obama administration was crumbling. I mean, it wasn't just, it was, and in my opinion still is, completely imploding. You had Democrats that supported him in the first election that were skeptical in the second, but they still didn't like the Republicans, so they voted for him again, even though they had questions about what he had said he would do, the promises that he made, all of that. Now you've got all these people on the fence. They can't believe they actually supported him because, number one, he's turned out to be a bigger warmonger than Bush. Number two, the very first thing he said he would do in office is bring our troops home. In 16 months, our troops will be home. That was the first time he took office in 2009. Our troops are still not home. I mean, come on. So now you have all these people that supported the new president, and I don't want to mention anything about race, except it seems to be important, so I'm going to. The new black president, first black president of the United States, they supported him because, number one, he was young, he was fresh-faced, he had extremely charismatic, he had everything going for him, and all these people thought, oh, wow, number one, he's not a Bush, number one, he's not related to Bush in any way, shape, or form, he doesn't talk like him, doesn't look like him, doesn't act like him, he's young, he's on the ball, this is what we've got going on. So we're going to support this man. You had the powers that be give him a Nobel Peace Prize before he ever did a single solitary thing. He was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. So now you've got all these people that have supported him all this time, but a lot of them are starting to fall away. They see he didn't do anything he said he would do. He can't get anything done. He's lie some more, and lie again. And now look what he's doing. And his thing was really, I mean, his administration is really, really imploding on itself. And all of a sudden, this Trayvon Martin thing happens. I wasn't going to say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because I'm going to talk about it now because I don't have to do it on my own show. So all of a sudden, this Trayvon Martin thing explodes. Number one, George Zimmerman's not a white man. He's Hispanic. Number two, but the media, if you watch the media,
you know what? I'm going to pause you right there. I'm going to make everybody wait until we come back into the next segment. See, they're going to have to wait just a few short seconds. I promise. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, anyone, because this is the only place you're going to hear her comment on this.
That's
we'll be right back. All right, so the break snuck up on us there, and Debbie was about to give you her take on this whole case going on down in Florida, you know, the blatant race baiting. And this is the only place you're going to hear it because she won't talk about this on her radio show. So
I will not talk about it on my radio show. So I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity to do it. Thanks. But here it is. So now you've got this administration's about to implode. So now you have this case in Florida. And the media is telling you constantly and all the time that it's white on black crime, number one. Number two, the guy's a kid. Number three, the white guy, quote unquote white guy, was just aggressive carrying a gun. He didn't need a gun, blah, blah, blah. Why does he need a gun? So now you're trying to kill two birds with one stone here, right? You've got white on black crime. Now you have the gun control issue, and this 17-year-old kid's been shot with a gun. The guy wasn't a police officer. He was a neighborhood watchman. And so now you're basically setting up race, gun control, and protecting minors all at one time, at a time when the Obama administration is imploding. Remember that, please. Then you've got Eric Holder, who is a huge gun control advocate, just taking everything he can, and he's decided, by the way, I'm sure everybody's heard it, he's going to look into taking this case since Mr. Zimmerman was found innocent. And I don't know if you saw the news today, but the only black juror has come out and said she felt trapped and confused when she claimed that Mr. Zimmerman was innocent instead of guilty. And so now you have that going on. But basically what you have is you have a divide and conquer mentality that is continuing to go on regardless of age or anything else. You've got this divide and conquer mentality that is continuing to go on, and the divide and conquerors are winning because you've got these people who were on the fence with Obama. They were ready to hightail it out of there and forget everything because they believed that he was doing them wrong, and now all of a sudden the white man got away with murder of the black kid, and now all these people have come back to support Obama because Eric Holder's going to look into it. Trayvon Martin could have been Obama's son. When it first happened, if I had a son, he'd be like Trayvon. Then when the jury came back with their verdict, I could have been Trayvon 35 years ago. That's what Obama said. So now you have an administration that's working its best at this race issue because they can't get anybody to bite anywhere else. And on top of that, he needs his support base back. And his support base, it was falling away. Well, now they're coming back, and I've seen it more than one time. I've seen people say, well, this president's being manipulated now. I don't know how I was so blind, and this only happened after this case. I don't know how I was so blind, but I've got to get back behind. We got to get back behind our president. He's our president. He's being manipulated. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. What's happening is you've fallen for the media ruse. You've fallen for the race war that they're trying to build up because they're trying to do it. They can't get civil unrest any other way because people aren't being baited with that. So let's go this way. Let's try this. Maybe this will get our little war so we can actually lock down the United States and declare martial law. Whatever. But I hope and I'm praying that people will wake up to it. Now, one of the things that I dislike is the fact that everybody says, Trayvon was a punk and he needed to die. That's a 17-year-old kid. No one needs to die. No, I don't agree with that. But what I do agree with is that they are using this, the media and the administration alike are using this to bait us into trying to start some kind of race war. And we're living in 2013. I grew up in the South in the 60s. Let me just tell you, you don't want to go back to that. I'm telling you, you don't. And there's no reason to go back to that, except somebody wants us to, obviously, because that's what they're doing. And that's the way I see it.
Well, the media would have you believe that we're back in the 1950s,
right.
and we're not there, okay?
No.
But they're trying to recreate that scenario so they can bring about literally a race war, and then they have an excuse for martial law.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to cut us off because the break's sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. More when we get back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. All right. So, Debbie and I were talking about the rampant race baiting, and I brought up martial law going into the break, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Debbie doesn't know Mae Brussel, so I saved this so I can get her natural reaction on air. But for the listeners, a lot of you know who Mae is. I've talked about her. She's like the grandma of conspiracy, I like to call her. And she was doing this stuff back in the 60s, but she talked about something called the King Alfred Plan, and I've actually played her broadcast a couple times over the years I've been doing radio. And the King Alfred Plan, it came from a book, and some people say it was fictitious, but Mae said that she saw real documents, that it was real. And she talked about it in the broadcast. Anyway, if you listen to the layout of the King Alfred Plan, even if it was fictitious and it was just a psyop, we'll say, that because they released it, the paperwork for it, like the write-up of the King Alfred Plan, was conveniently left on I think it was a New York City subway, if I remember correctly.
What?
Yeah, back in like the Bronx. Like around the Bronx or Harlem or somewhere back in the 70s. One of the old school Black Panthers, not these new school CIA Black Panthers, but one of the original Black Panthers emailed me when I first did this broadcast like a year ago. I got to find I got to find the email, and he wrote me how I was right, and because he had heard the broadcast, and he said I was correct, and he had been one of the people that had founded, or I guess leafleted or handed it out or whatever, and he said that they thought it was real. But the King Alfred Plan basically was a plan to round up, whether it was fictitious or not, or whatever one people believe, it was this plan to round up black people in the event that they rioted for a race riot.
Right. That was from Rex 84.
Well, yeah. Well, when you read the King Alfred Plan, and this is going back again into this thing was supposedly written in the 60s. They talk about breaking the United States up into 10 different. Well, they called it 10 areas. Well, what does FEMA call it today?
Exactly.
10 FEMA regions. And this is from like the 60s. And when she was airing it, I think if I remember correctly, it was 72, or it was either 72 or 78 wow. She was airing it. Yeah. So this is back in the 70s she's airing this. And when I first heard this, my jaw dropped, because I was like, oh my God, that's 10 FEMA regions. When people start to go back and they look at history, you can see. So the King Alfred Plan, you see, and I said on there, in all these martial law plans, Rex 84, who are the first people they round up? Mm-hmm. Black people. The black community is the first people they go after. And everybody's like, well, is it just race-based? Well, no, I think that they fear them. Right. Maybe they fear them because they feel that they're superior, physically, like they might physically overpower them if it was hand-to-hand combat or something. So they're the first ones that, like, militarily, because I understand how the military thinks, they view them as the biggest threat, not because they're black people and they need to get eradicated. I mean, maybe there's some still idiots like that in there, but it's more of a tactical threat than a racist thing. But it's just, when I saw the King Alfred Plan, and then you see all this rampant race baiting, it's like, dude, they're really trying to push for a race war, so then they have an excuse to put out those little DHS checkpoints that they've been wanting to break out, because they're all bubble wrapped and they want to take the plastic off of them. Yeah, they're sitting in storage. They want to use their toys, so they need an excuse. That's what they're doing. And they need us divided, because you know what? If you and I and everybody else are busy arguing over, well, I don't like you because you're white, or I don't like you because you're Spanish, or I don't like you because you're black, or I don't like you because you're Asian, or you're a Muslim, or you're a Jew, or you're a Christian, you know what I mean, or whatever, or you're gay, or you're straight. If we're too busy arguing over all this BS, right? That's really, it's arbitrary compared to really what's going on. Okay, when you start to realize what's going on, they're controlling everybody. It's how they're controlling the masses, because everybody's too busy arguing over this stupid crap. No one's paying attention to what they're actually doing. And then they keep going to them, oh, please, make this law. Or can you do something? And the government says, well, we just happen to have this law, but we don't have enough backing because there's people, you got them civil libertarians, and you get whatever small focus group, oh my God, well screw them, we need protection, we love the government, yay. And then they attack each other, and then the local people or whatever, the masses blame, they'll blame that special interest group, and they'll say it's all their fault. It's not their fault. They were just manipulated into calling for it. The real people you should be pissed at are the people that manipulate everybody.
Right, exactly. But yet they don't see that. They're not seeing that because number one, a lot of these people have been manipulated for a long time, and I understand that. I get it. But at the same time, you have to have enough going on. You must have enough going on that you see, you can see. And this comes back to, I don't know how you feel about some of the stuff in the Bible. I am not, I don't know if I should say this or not, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I read all kinds of things, not just the Bible. But there is some good in everything. And the Bible says, in other things besides the Bible, but the Bible tells us that, when it's time for you to see it, you're going to see it. Well, wake up and start looking, because it's right in front of your face. It's there. All of this that's going on is basically orchestrated to catch you, either to keep you from wandering, to keep you from uniting with your fellow man, or to keep you angry enough that you're not willing to stand up and say, you know what, I'm just going to do something about it. You're not going to do it. So now you've got, it's frustrating to see, but it does happen and it does go on. And they are trying to keep us divided. They are trying to keep us in any way possible and keep us divided from our brothers and sisters overseas as well. The general population of any country overseas, they're keeping us divided so that we can't rise up and work against them. And that's what people need to understand. And they do it well. They do a good job of it. Good job of it.
You ever see the movie A Bug's Life?
Yes.
When the cockroach was standing there, or whatever he is, it wasn't a cockroach, a grasshopper. That's what he was. Well, I think of these people like cockroaches, so whatever. Anyway, the grasshopper standing there, and I guess they had got one of the ants had stood up to him, and the other ones were, his little minions were like, well, who cares? It's only one ant, and he has that jar full of seeds, and he opens up the jar, and he takes one out, and he hits him in the head with it, and he says, oh, that's just one ant, right? Ha ha, who cares? And then he opens up the jar, and they all come rushing out and bury them. And he said, if one ant stands up, then they'll all stand up. And if they all stand up and they all take a look at what's going on, they'll realize that there's more of them than there is of us, and that means our way of life changes. So it's not about food for survival, it's about keeping the ants in line. And that's what they do. Exactly.
That's exactly right. And when you think about it that way, think about this. You have to think about this too, is that there are 535 people in Washington, D.C., and how many people in the population of the United States of America? Even if you just took the working population of the United States of America, left off the kids, left off the retired old people, you still have nearly 160,000 people in the 160 million people in the United States. And we are being controlled by who? By 535 people in Washington, D.C., and the media. Somebody needs to think about that.
And most of those people in Washington, D.C. are so out of touch because a lot of them go to the same controlled media for their info.
Yeah, exactly. And when you say that, it brings me back to one of the documents that we used in Peddling Influence, which was that February 9th, 1917 House Congressional Record, where they're talking about the media. They're literally talking about the media and talking about how they're finding out what's going on overseas when they're trying to decide about this war, deciding whether or not to enter this war through the media, while the media is feeding them stories that are untrue, they're telling them this, and that's going on, and then the next day they're retracting it back on whatever page they're retracting it on, obviously not on the front page. And they're telling people things that are going on that aren't going on. Then you have these people that are reacting and they're angry. And when you go through it and you find out that at one point, like 150 editors of newspapers and college professors believe what the media is saying. They believe that that at the time, that Germany took one of our ambassadors hostage. And so now you have all these people so upset because we need to go to war. We need to get our ambassador back. We've got to do something about it. And yet, that wasn't the truth. That wasn't even close to the truth, because the ambassador at the time was friends with the German elite. They were protecting him. They were not taking him into custody. They were protecting him, and they had already assured him and insured his way out of Germany before they even went into conference about the war that was coming up. But this is what they were told in the newspapers, that Germany took our ambassador. He's a prisoner. He's being held prisoner. And, J. Hampton Moore, the representative on the House floor that day, was so frustrated that he just said, that basically what they need to do is they need to tie an anchor around the neck. The media. He's talking about the media shills. They need to tie an anchor around their neck and jump off the deck of the ship, because we would be better off if they all did that. And, you got to think. And this was in 1917. Yeah, you got to think, if they did that, how much better we would be. How much better off we'd be if they actually did that.
Well, I mean, look at a classic example of control of the media. Also, a perfect example of the control of the media is, look at the Lusitania sinking. A lot of people don't realize, but that ship,
exactly,
that ship had arms on it, okay, and the Germans had said, don't send that ship out, because if you send that ship out and it goes into waters, we know it's got weapons on it, and if civilians, if you go on board that ship, it's going to get torpedoed. Well, the ship went on its way, and the Germans, the government, had put the ad in newspapers all along the eastern seaboard telling the civilians, we're going to torpedo the ship. Do not get on it. Well, the story got blocked in all of, I think, but like one or two newspapers, and the newspapers that did plug it and actually did published it about 10 hours after the ship left. So, yeah, well done.
I think, yeah, exactly. Another one is the Philadelphia. At the same time, the newspapers were reporting that the ship, the Philadelphia, had been sunk, and this was after they sunk the Housatonic. And they sank the Philadelphia, and so the news, according to the congressional record, that just went across the country like wildfire across the country. And it turned out that the Philadelphia arrived safely in port exactly when it was supposed to. Yeah. But this is what the media was telling them that day. But you have to look at who was behind the media at the time, too, because in 1915, you had the J.P. Morgan interests buying up media and news interests so that they could control the news. But why?
Look at Hearst Publications.
Why? Well, exactly. Hearst Publications and the Spanish American War.
The History Channel. What do you think the big H stands for in the History Channel? It certainly doesn't stand for history. It stands for Hearst Publications. That's what it is. I'm going to cut us off there because we got the break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Final segment coming up. WilliamLewisFilms.com. Check it out. Get the movies. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, final segment. I'm going to give Debbie the floor here. I know she wanted to offer solutions, and there was something else that she wanted to cover really quick. All I'm going to say is, and you'll see this in the film, go watch Peddling Influence, remember the Maine, okay? You can thank Hearst Publications for that lie. It's already been From research into it, it's already been found that it was probably a coal bunker explosion, which is something that was normal at the time, that sunk the ship. Without any evidence, it was blamed on Spain and America. We gotta go get them, because that's how Americans are. So again, when you see the History Channel, don't think the H stands for history, it stands for Hearst. Debbie, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're absolutely right, and we do cover that in the film, the Spanish-American War, and Hearst and Pulitzer's part in that. But what I wanted to remind people about, especially about J.P. Morgan and World War I, is that he took control of the newspapers in 1915. He had to do it because he was the only procurer of Allied forces munitions. He stood to make good money from the sale of munitions for the Allied forces. In fact, he made $30 million. That's a lot of money today, but think about it, what it was back then. He made $30 million on the sale of munitions alone, plus interest on the Allied forces loans that were put out. So, this is something that people need to understand. His control of the media wasn't so that he could get you the truth. His control of the media was so that he could control your thoughts, or not our thoughts, but the thoughts at the time about war, because our population didn't have any interest in going to war. So what does that tell us, though? Because you've got Hearst controlling the news during the Spanish-American War. You have J.P. Morgan controlling the news during World War I. You had Winston Churchill controlling the news via Roald Dahl and Ian Fleming during World War II. So what does that tell you? What it tells you is that we need to move on to alternative media. Can we trust all the alternative media? Well, you can trust it a hell of a lot better than you can the mainstream media. And there's a lot of good alternative media out there, like your show and my show, I dare say. And there's all kinds of alternative media out there. There's all kinds of people trying to make a difference. And if you can't be the media, which you can if you so choose, but if you can't be the media, you can support the alternative media, because you've got people like J.P. Morgan buying up media interests so they control what's going on and what's said. And that's the important part. Either become the media yourself and get the truth out there, or support your alternative media and help them get the truth out there. Either way, those are solutions that are easy to do, and everybody can do them. Everybody.
I agree, because a lot of people say, oh, I can't go out and pound the pavement, or I can't go out and do interviews, or I'm not an activist, or my job, I'd get fired if my boss caught me, a video of me, doing something like that, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, not everybody has to do that, look at the military as an example, okay? There's many different jobs, many different people doing many different jobs. So, and they all work together. Well, let's do the same way. Let's operate the same way, right? If you can't physically go do something, then support somebody who can. Go over to William's website and go get a film. Get Peddling Influence. If you can't buy anything else, get the movie Peddling Influence. I'm promising you, if you watch it yourself, you'll learn a bunch of stuff. And then you can sit down and have a screening with your family, have a screening with your friends. See, that's what's really important about getting the physical stuff. That's why I always tell people to buy the media, the physical media, because you can literally go and have a screening. Well, I could do it with my laptop. Yeah, and then you got to figure out how to plug it in. You got to look. Get a DVD. You sit down. You go to whoever's house. You maybe have everybody together at your parents' house. Your whole family, everybody's there. You pop it in the DVD player. It's simple, easy. It doesn't take 15 minutes to set up, and you don't run the risk of everybody running out of the room before you can, and you lose their attention before you get the movie going. I'm telling you, you get the DVD, you throw it in the DVD player, bam, problem solved. So
there you go. And anybody can do that, absolutely. And also with everybody trying to get involved politically, they can do the same thing. There's great films out there. It's not, William Lewis Films. We have a lot of films that we cover all manner of things, but we're not the only independent film company out there. There are others. Free Mind Films. James Lane and Chris Emery just put out their new State of Mind film. Their first one, A Noble Eye, was excellent. I encourage people to get several films and start. Why don't we start an independent film festival in all areas of the country? Why couldn't we do that? We could.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, we could do that. It'd be easy to do.
It could meet like
You just
3
have to have
times
a
a year.
place.
It could meet 3 times, have 3
Yeah.
different spots, three locations per year, once every 4 months. And you have you could have one on the West Coast, one in Central, and one on the East Coast. That way you cover the entire country and everybody has an opportunity to attend. That's a brilliant idea. That's an absolutely brilliant idea. Hello, let's go. Independent media community, hello. Let's get our stuff together. Let's all start working together. We have to put our egos aside, I think, everybody, and realize that we can all work together like Voltron. We all come together and we start to, we'll come together. We'll be super strong. And with that, we're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, I love you all. Amazing, amazing, amazing interview. Debbie Lewis, just awesome individual. WilliamLewisFilms.com. The solutions to our problems are an inside job.